Hello everybody, this is Courtney with Fiber Fox Studios, and today we are going to get started with learning how to do this really cute and easy mosaic pattern. And as always, I'm going to ask you to refer down to the description. There is a lot of extra information always down in the description on my tutorials, and I'm going to be starting out a new swatch to show you guys this particular pattern. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using my color A, and that is for me the white color, and color B for me is going to be my blue color, and that's actually what I'm going to get started with. Sorry. So I'm going to grab my color B for me, and that's going to be blue, or this pretty kind of periwinkle blue color, almost violet. And we're going to get started by chaining in multiples of 10 plus 6 at the end. So to start your work, you're going to put a slip knot on your hook. You're going to grab your yarn and pull through a loop. And that makes your first chain, and you're going to continue to do this until you have reached the desired size of your project, counting in multiples of 10, and then you're going to add 6 chains at the end. So we're going to go ahead and pause here. You're going to work out the number of chains you want, and then we will meet back up to go ahead and start out. Make sure that you add that 6 chains at the end. So go ahead and pause here and get your chain ready. Alright, so I have worked out my multiples that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to, in this case, be doing, I've got a chain of 26. So 2 multiples of 10 plus my 6 at the end. And as you can see here, we've got this loop that's on our hook. We're never going to count that. We are going to skip this very next stitch, and we're going to move into the second. So into that second stitch right there, we're going to insert, and we're going to go under that V to do a traditional single crochet. So the beginning of our row always begins with a traditional single crochet, and it ends with a traditional single crochet. So for this entire row, it's extremely easy. You're going to be working a back loop only single crochet into each and every stitch, except for the very last one. We're going to be going into the last one doing a traditional single crochet. So to do that back loop, you just insert into that one back loop, just like I've done here, and you go ahead and complete out a normal single crochet. So we're going to do that together again. So you go right here and you pick up that back loop only, grab your yarn and pull up a loop, grab your yarn and pull through 2. So we're going to do that same thing in each and every stitch all the way down this row. So you're going to go ahead and pause here, and we're going to meet back up because we're going to do that last stitch in your chain together so that we can make sure that you do the traditional single crochet. For those of you who have been doing the other videos, you're going to be skipping this part and meeting up with me when we begin the actual mosaic portion. Alright, so you're meeting back up with me. We've done a back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch on this row, and we have a 1 stitch left. So every single row is going to end with a traditional single crochet, and what I mean by that is you are going to go underneath both of the loops, the V, each and every time at the end of your row, and you're going to grab your yarn, pull up a loop, and do a traditional single crochet to make sure you're going to have a nice even edge. So we begin our row with a traditional single crochet, and we end it with a traditional. So we're going to go ahead from here. I like to chain up 2, and that is where I'm going to clip my yarn and bind off. So I'll show you that real quick. So I've got that chain of 2 on there, and then I go ahead and pull my yarn on up, and then I like to take and place my fingers right above the chain, just like so, and pull that tail to cinch it down. It makes that cute little knot right there. Hopefully you guys can see. Let me get behind there. And that makes sure my work never comes undone. So that's how I do it. You can bind off whatever way you prefer. So now to go ahead and start our next row, we're going to be switching over to, in my case, the color A, which is the white color. And I'm going under the V in the very first stitch. And you'll notice there's a little bump right here. That was our turning chain. Don't go into that. You're going to make sure you go in to the first little V and that's where you're going to add on your yarn. So you're going to go ahead, I like to do just a slip knot, and then I've got my hook inserted into that V. I'm going to go ahead and add my slip knot on and cinch it down, and then I'm going to grab and I'm going to pull up that loop. Now I'm going to grab both the tail and the working yarn, and I'm going to pull through and do a chain. And then I like to go ahead and let my tail fall to the back, but you can go ahead and go back into that same exact stitch, grab your yarn and pull up a loop, grab your yarn and pull through two, and then you can kind of cinch that all down. And that is a traditional single crochet right there in the first stitch in your row. So now for this row, just like the last row, we're going to go ahead and do a back loop only single crochet. And from this angle you can hopefully see what I mean about the back loop only. If you look at that V, we're just picking up and going right there into that back loop. And we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in each and every stitch all the way down this row. And then on our next row is when we're going to be beginning doing our drop downs and working the mosaic portion. So you can go ahead and pause here and meet back up with me at the end of your row. Make sure that you work a traditional single crochet in that very last stitch, and I'll meet back up with you at that point just to make sure you're getting the hang of that. And I'll also fix this tail that I've got coming out. Alright, you're meeting back up with me here. You have completed your row of back loop only single crochets, and you have one last stitch left. So we're going to go ahead and go under that V in the very last stitch in the row, pull up a loop, and do our traditional single crochet right there in that very last stitch. And then, like I did before, I'm going to chain up two, and I'm going to go ahead and come in and clip my yarn and pull out my tail, and then grab and cinch it down. So this is what your work is looking at like. Very simple. So now this very next row is going to be our first mosaic row. So we're going to go ahead and grab our yarn, and just like we've been doing before, we are going to do a slip knot. We are going to find that very first stitch in the row, and you can see it's your first V, and that is where we're going to insert our hook. We're going to make sure we go under that V so we can do our traditional single crochet to start out our row. And we're going to go ahead and pull that loop up. Now we're going to grab our yarn, working yarn in our tail, and do a chain to kind of lock that down. Then I let my tail drop. I go back in to that same exact stitch, and I'm going to grab my yarn and pull up a loop, grab my yarn and pull through all those little loops on my hook. So now we're going to get started with that mosaic row. We've done our first stitch in the row is our single crochet. So we're going to follow that up by doing two back loop only single crochets. So there's my first one. There's one. And here is two. And now in our very next stitch, we're going to be doing our drop down double crochet. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. You're going to go ahead and wrap your yarn around your hook like you're going to do a traditional double crochet. And here's the very next stitch. So to find where we're going to be grabbing, all you have to do to drop down that double crochet is slide your hook down. And you'll see there's a little loop that's sticking out from where we did our back loop only single crochet. So now we're going to grab our yarn and we're going to pull up a loop, keeping it nice and loose. And you don't want to have tight tension because you don't want to draw this loop up. You want it to stay in position, so you can always put your thumb over it to kind of hold it down if you're worried about your tension. And then you're going to grab your yarn and pull up a loop, grab your yarn and pull through the loop. So that is just a traditional double crochet, but we are calling it the drop down double crochet because we're dropping it down in front of our work. So now what we're going to do is one back loop single crochet in the very next stitch. And if you're worried about where your next stitch is, you can always fold this double crochet back And when you do that, you can see that there's a stitch hidden right behind it. That's double crochet is covering that little drop down double crochet. So when you check back behind it, as long as you see that you're covering one stitch, then this very next stitch is going to be the stitch you're going to work in and do your back loop only single crochet. And now we're going to do one more drop down double crochet right there in the very next stitch. So here's our very next stitch, and we're just going to slide our hook down, and that little loop right there in the front is popping out. That's what we're going to grab up. And then we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, keeping loose tension. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, grab our yarn and pull through 2. So we form this cute little box right here. So now we're going to go ahead and do our repeat. That what we're going to be doing till the end of the row. We're going to be working in our next 5 stitches doing a back loop only single crochet. So to make sure that we're going into our next stitch, because if you work into it, you'll end up increasing your stitches and all your work will kind of be scrunched over. So you want to just pull that back out of your way. Make sure you see that one right here behind it. When you bring it back into position, your double crochet, it covers that one stitch. And then we're able to go ahead and work right there in the very next, doing our back loop only single crochet. So we're going to do a total of 5 of these, and this is our repeat for this row. So there's 5 back loop only single crochets. So here's number 2. Here's number 3. Number 4. And number 5. Now in this very next stitch, we are going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So here's our next stitch. We're going to slide our hook down and we're going to grab up that little loop. We're going to grab our yarn and do our drop down double crochet. So we've pulled up a loop. We're going to grab and pull through 2. Grab and pull through 2. Now we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And then we're going to do a drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So here's my next stitch. When I slide my hook down, that loop right there is the one I want to pick up. And we're going to complete out that drop down double crochet, and that ends our repeat. So you're going to continue to work on down your entire row, doing 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop only single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet. And then you're going to keep working that same manner all the way down, and we'll meet back up when you have finished this row. Make sure that your very last stitch in the row, you do a single crochet, a traditional single crochet. No matter what the pattern, if you're supposed to be dropping down, doesn't matter. Always at the end of your row, end with a traditional single crochet. All right, we are back. Here's what your work is looking like. And you're going to go ahead and add on your next color, or, switch back to your color A. And we're going to go ahead and join on to the very first stitch in the row. We're going to make sure that we do a traditional single crochet in that very first stitch. So just like we've been doing, we're going to go ahead and chain up 1, insert back into that same exact stitch, and I'm just going to go ahead and grab my yarn and pull up a loop, grab my yarn and pull through 2. So now to get started on this row, we're going to be doing a back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. So we're going to that very next one, back loop only single crochet, and then we are going to go ahead and wrap our yarn, and in the very next stitch we're going to be doing our drop down double crochet. So we're going to go ahead and here's our next stitch. We're going to slide our hook straight down on that stitch, and we're going to grab up that loop below, and we're going to grab our yarn, pulling up a loop, keeping loose tension, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. just like so. So now our repeat for this row is very easy. We're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets into the next 3 stitches. So there's number 2 for me. And then a 3rd back loop only single crochet. And then 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So here's my next stitch. Slide my hook down. Here's the loop right there. We're going to grab that and pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. And that ends our repeat. So we're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets. And then in our 4th stitch, we're going to do our drop down double crochet. So there's 3 again for me. And then 1 drop down double crochet. So here's our next stitch. When we slide our hook down, we can find that loop very easily. Grab up that loop, pull up a loop, keeping a loose tension, pull through 2, pull through 2. And that is what your work's looking like. So you're framing out around these, for me, what's the blue section? I'm framing it out with my white color now. So whatever color you're using, that's how this is working. So you're going to go ahead and pause here, work on down the rest of your row. 3 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet until the end of your row. And in the very last stitch of your row, you are doing your traditional single crochet. Alright, so we're meeting back up, and this is what your work is looking like. And we're going to go ahead and join on our next color of yarn. If you're just using 2, you're switching back. In my case, it's going to be the blue. So I've got that slip knot, and I've gone in under the V to make sure that I'm doing a traditional single crochet in this very first stitch. So I go ahead and pull up that loop. I'm going to grab my tail and working yarn and chain 1. And then I'm going to go back down in that same exact stitch. Right there in that first one. I know that tail kind of gets in the way for you guys seeing. I'm going right there in that same stitch. Grabbing my yarn and pulling up a loop. Try not to split your yarn either. And then I'm going to grab and pull through all those loops there on my hook. And I'm going to lose my yarn too while I'm at it. So we're going to go ahead and work now. In the very next stitch, we're going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So if you take a look right here, we're at this point in our row. We're right here before this previous drop down. So we're right here's our next stitch. So we're going to go ahead and slide our hook down. There's that loop right there that we want to grab up. Go ahead and grab that loop, pulling up a loop, or grab that loop up, and then you're going to grab and pull up a loop. Grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2 to complete your first drop down double crochet. Now we're going to be doing our repeat. Our repeat is going to begin right now, and the repeat is going to be 5 back loop single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet. And we're going to do that together now. So in my very next stitch right here, I'm going to go ahead and do a back loop only single crochet. Next stitch, I'm going to do a back loop single crochet. Third stitch, I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. In my 4th stitch, I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. And in my 5th stitch, I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. Now the 6th stitch, I'm going to be dropping down and doing my drop down double crochet. So I'm going to go ahead and find my next stitch. I'm just going to slide my hook straight down to find the loop that I want to grab up. And then I'm going to grab my yarn and pull up a loop, keeping loose tension. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. The very next stitch, I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. And in the very next stitch, I'm going to do the end of my repeat with a drop down double crochet. Here's my next stitch. Slide my hook straight down, finding that loop that I want to pull up. Grab my yarn and pull up a loop. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. Grab my yarn and pull through 2. And that ends out my repeat. So I've got, this is what my work is looking like. I'm going to go ahead and do that repeat again with you guys. So we're going to do in the very next stitch, and if you're unsure where your next stitch is, remember you can always fold that double crochet back. Make sure that you're covering that stitch behind it, and the very next one is your next stitch. So we're going to go ahead and do 5 back loop only single crochets to begin our repeat. There's 2. Here's number 3. Here's number 4. And here is number 5. Then in the next stitch, we're going to do our drop down double crochet. In the very next stitch right here, because we can check and make sure we're covering, we're going to do our back loop only single crochet, one of those. And then in the very next stitch, we're going to be doing our drop down double crochet. Go ahead and slide our hook down, find that loop. And want to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, keeping nice loose tension. Grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. So if you take a look at what you're doing, you're now just creating these little squares in between your posts, in my case the white posts. So you're going to go ahead and pause the video here and continue to work on down your row, doing 5 back loop single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop single crochet, 1 drop down double crochet to end out your repeat. And in the very last stitch of your row, as always, you are going to be doing a traditional single crochet. And you're meeting back up with me. This is what your work is going to look like. Now we're going to go ahead and begin the next row. We're going to find our very first stitch in the row right here. And we're going to get underneath both of those loops because we are going to do a traditional single crochet just like we have been. So I've got my slip knot. Go ahead and pull up my loop. Chain 1. Go back down in that same exact stitch and pull up a loop and grab and pull through all those little loops on my hook. And now we're going to go ahead and we are going to immediately start doing, we're here in this very first stitch. In our next stitch, we're going to start out by doing our repeat. So our repeat begins immediately with a total of 7 back loop single crochets, and then we're going to be doing 1 drop down double crochet. So here's our very first stitch that we're in. Here's the second stitch. So we're going to do 7 back loop only single crochets to start our repeat. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then 1 drop down double crochet right here into the very next stitch. So we're going to slide down, grab up that loop, grab and pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2, and that ends our repeat for this row. So we're going to do that again together. We're going to do 7 back loop only single crochets into the next 7 stitches. So there's 2, 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. And then our 8th stitch for the repeat is a drop down double crochet. Here's our very next stitch. So we're going to slide down and find that loop we want to grab up. We're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. Grab our yarn and pull through 2. And that ends our repeat. So essentially you are just working back loop single crochets all the way up until you get into the center of the square, and that's where you're going to be doing your drop down. So your work is going to look like that. You can go ahead and pause here and meet back up with me when you're ready to move on to your very next row. All right, so you're meeting back up with me and ready to move on to your very next row. And I just wanted to point out, in this case right here, when I got to my 7th back loop only single crochet, my very next stitch that if I was following the repeat for the end, you know, coming towards the end of my repeat, I would have done a drop down double crochet. But because I was at the end of my row, I did a traditional single crochet in that very last stitch. You always have to remember that. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our next row. I'm going to go ahead and add on my yarn. And for me, I'm switching colors again. So I'm going to be going back to my color B. And I'm going to be doing my traditional single crochet right here in the very first stitch. And just make sure you don't ever grab up over here on the side. You want to make sure that you go into the very first stitch in the row, and you're going to go under that V, wiggle in there and get in it, and then you're going to be able to go ahead and do your traditional single crochet. And try not to lose your yarn like I keep doing. And now I'm going to go ahead and chain 1. I'm going to go back down in that same exact very first stitch, grab my yarn and pull up a loop. Grab and pull through all those little loops on my hook to finish out my first single crochet for this row. Now I'm going to immediately be doing a drop down double crochet. And this is going to be the first time in this pattern that you're having to grab up the front loop of a double crochet from a row prior. So in this case, my very next stitch is right here. And when I slide my hook down, this little loop that's sticking out is what I'm grabbing up. So I'm going to go ahead and grab and pull up a loop, keeping nice loose tension. Grab and pull through 2. Grab and pull through 2. So we've just connected those 2 together. So now we're going to go ahead and begin our repeat for this row. We're going to do 5 back loop only single crochets, then 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop only single crochet, and 1 drop down. We're going to do that all together. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go into the very next stitch, and we're going to do a back loop only single crochet. We're going to do that, a total of 5 of those, 1 in each of these stitches. So there's number 2. Here's number 3, number 4, and number 5. And now, just like we did before, we're going to go ahead. Our next stitch is right here. When we slide down, that's the little loop we want to pick up. And we're going to go ahead and do our drop down double crochet. In the very next stitch, we're going to do a back loop only single crochet. And in the very last stitch for the repeat, we're going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So as you can see, you're just working in between doing your back loop only single crochets and then doing your drop down to connect these little bars, those double crochets. So we're going to do that one more time together because that was the end of our repeat right here, this drop down. We're going to begin our repeat again with 5 back loop only single crochets. There's 3, number 4, and number 5. Here's our very next stitch. We're going to do our drop down double crochet. So we're going to slide down and find that loop. Very next stitch, we do our back loop only single crochet. And the end of our repeat is 1 drop down double crochet into the very next stitch. So you can go ahead and pause here and continue to work on down your entire row, doing that exact same thing until the row end. And as always, the very last stitch in the row is going to be your traditional single crochet. All right, so you're meeting back up with me, and I've already joined on my yarn this time by doing my traditional single crochet right here in the very first stitch. So in the very next stitch right here, I'm going to go ahead and do my back loop only single crochet. In the very next stitch, I'm going to do my drop down double crochet. So here's my very next stitch. I'm going to slide down and I'm going to grab up that loop, grab and pull up my yarn, pull through two, pull through two. There's my drop down double crochet. And now our repeat's going to begin for this row, and it's a very easy repeat. We're going to make sure that we're working into that very next stitch, which is right here for us. And we are going to do 3 back loop only single crochets into the next 3 stitches. There's number 2. Here is number 3. And then in that 4th stitch, we're going to do a drop down double crochet. So here's my 4th stitch. Slide down and grab up that loop. Grab and pull up a loop. Grab and pull through 2. Grab and pull through 2. And that's the end of my repeat. So my repeat's going to begin again in the very next stitch. I'm going to do 3 back loop only single crochets into the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and here's number 3. And our 4th stitch to end the repeat is going to be a drop down double crochet. So if you take a look at what you're doing, you're literally just framing out around, for me, what's the little blue posts that I just put on the previous row. So you're going to continue on down your row doing 3 back loop only single crochets and 1 drop down double crochet into the 4th stitch. And that's going to be your repeat. Very, very easy to remember repeat. And you can go ahead and pause here, and we will meet back up when you are ready to move on to your very next row. Alright, so you're meeting back up with me, and this is what your work is looking like. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I've already joined on my yarn with a traditional single crochet right there in the very first stitch. So we're going to be doing 2 back loop single crochets, 1 into each of the next 2 stitches. So there's my very next stitch. I'm going to do my back loop only single crochet, and in the very next stitch I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. And now we're going to be doing a drop down double crochet right here into this very next stitch. And this is our last row for this particular pattern, and then I'm going to show you how to move on up and continue on. So we've got a drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do a back loop only single crochet and 1 drop down double crochet into the very next stitch. So that is what we're doing on this row. So now our repeat is going to begin here. So we're going to do 5 back loop only single crochets over the next 5 stitches. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. And then we are going to do a drop down double crochet into the very next stitch. We're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet into the very next stitch, and then 1 back loop only, or I'm sorry, 1 drop down double crochet into the very next stitch to end our repeat. This is what your work's going to end up looking like. So you're going to go ahead and continue to work in that same manner through the end of your row. You're going to do 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop only single crochet, and 1 drop down double crochet to end out that repeat. So you're just making a little box here in between your white posts, or what's my white posts from my previous row. So you can go ahead and pause and we'll meet back up. I'll show you how to continue this pattern on. Otherwise, if you do not want to continue this pattern up for additional repeats of it, you can move on to any of the other mosaics and start mixing and matching patterns here. Alright, so if you are meeting back up with me, you have finished out your last row, and I'm about to show you what you need to do to continue to move on up. Some of you are going to be able to look at this and see that you can just continue to move up in the same manner. And you're going to work in the same exact manner that you have been. But I'm going to show you a few more rows just to kind of get you started on that, so you can see how that will look if you want to continue this pattern for a section of whatever project you're doing, or to do this in pattern for an entire project. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by adding on my yarn to the beginning of my row, just like we have been doing. I'm going to go ahead and get my slip knot on my hook, and in my very first stitch I'm doing my traditional single crochet, just like always. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that out. So now, to get started, to continue on, I'm going to be doing 3 back loop single crochets and then 1 drop down double crochet. So in the very next stitch I'm doing a back loop only single crochet. There's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And in my 4th stitch I'm going to do my drop down double crochet. I'm right here in between those little posts that we created on that previous row. So I'm going to go ahead and do my drop down double crochet, and now my repeat's going to begin. I'm going to do a total of 7 back loop single crochets and then 1 drop down double crochet. So I'm on my 3rd back loop single crochet. Here's my 4th. Here's my 5th. Here is my 6th. And here's number 7. So we needed 7 back loop single crochets. And now I'm here again in between those little posts that we created. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grab up my loop and do my drop down double crochet to end out that repeat. So if you're wanting to continue on up, you're going to keep doing the exact same thing all the way down the rest of your row. You're going to do a total of 7 back loop only single crochets and 1 drop down double crochet to end that repeat. So you can go ahead and continue working, and then we're going to meet back up and we're going to do another row together. Alright, so we're meeting back up. We're going to go ahead and continue, and you are going to recognize these stitches that we're doing, the counts that we're doing, because it's the same thing that we've already done. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I've already joined all my yarn with a traditional single crochet. In the next 2 stitches, I'm going to need to do a back loop only single crochet. There's 1, and here's 2. And now, if you take a look, just like we did before, we've come to a point where we're going to be connecting with our previous drop down double crochet. So in this very next stitch, we're going to drop down into a drop down double crochet. So I've grabbed up the front of that loop on the double crochet from the prior row. I'm going to finish out my double crochet. Now I'm going to do a back loop only single crochet. And then I'm going to do 1 more drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So here we again we've formed our little box. So now our repeat for this row, we're going to be getting started with the repeat. Now we're going to do 5 back loop only single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And here's our very next stitch. We're going to be doing a drop down double crochet. So we're going to be connecting this double crochet from the previous row. So go ahead and grab up that loop and finish our drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And we're going to end our repeat with a drop down double crochet into the very next stitch. So you're going to continue to work on in the same exact manner if you're wanting to continue on doing a repeat of this pattern. So you're going to go ahead and pause here and do your 5 back loop only single crochets, 1 drop down double crochet, 1 back loop only single crochet, and 1 drop down double crochet to end that repeat. So you're going to work that same way all the way down the rest of your row, and you're going to meet back up with me and I'll show you how to finish that off. Or go on to the next row, I mean. And always, always single crochet in the very last stitch of your row. All right, so we're going to finish this out. I'm going to finish and do one more row with you to show how you're going to end this off, but you've done these before. And that's the main point I want to stress. Any of these patterns, you can continue to work on up. And if you just take a look at what you did on your previous sections, you will be able to very easily see what you need to do as you move on up. When you finish out this row, last row with me that I'm about to do, in order to move back to this, you're already in position. You're going to start your squares again in these sections that we're creating. So it's very easy to keep doing a continuous mosaic all the way up and just use what you did before. And you're going to see that you're going to do one section like this, and then you'll have one where, in this case, we've scooted every one of our squares is inset. And then it goes right back out to where they begin at the edges of the row. So it's just going to work in alternating patterns all the way up. And that's how any of them work out. So you can go ahead and do any of those in a continuous pattern if that's what you prefer. So to go ahead and get started here, I've already joined my yarn to my work, done my traditional single crochet right here in the first stitch. And now if I take a look at my work, I need to do a back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch. And now to complete my pattern out, I'm going to be framing around the little blue posts for me, but I'm going to frame around these posts. And so in the very next stitch, I'm going to be working my drop down double crochet. So I've just slid down, grabbed up my loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. And now my repeat's going to begin. I'm going to do 3 back loop only single crochets. 1, 2, and 3 back loop only single crochets. Then in the next stitch, I'm going to drop down and do a drop down double crochet. And if you stop and take a look at your work, you did this down here, you're doing it up again here. You're just making that pattern continue on. So now in the next 3 stitches, same thing that we just did. We're going to do 3 back loop only single crochets, then 1 drop down double crochet, just like we've previously done when we were working this pattern. So now I've done my 3rd back loop only single crochet. So my next stitch is going to be a drop down double crochet. Right there in that very next stitch. And now I'm going to continue on with the repeat again. 3 back loop only single crochets. But if you're paying attention to your pattern more so than your count, just look at what you did before. You're framing out. This blue square is just getting framed out at the top with the same framework that we did here at the bottom. We framed it out here at the bottom. So we're going to frame it out here at the top. So my 4th stitch in this row is going to be a drop down double crochet. And at any time I can fold that back and make sure that I'm covering and that I'm not accidentally working into the stitch that drop down double crochet is covering. So you can continue to work on down the rest of your row, and then we will meet back up in just a moment so I can show you how this looks when we've worked out, worked the pattern twice in a row. So, you know what? I'll just stay with you guys. We're doing pretty close to my end. We're getting pretty close to my end. So I'm done my 3 back loop only single crochets. The next stitch is going to be a drop down double crochet. My next stitch is going to be a back loop only single crochet because my repeat's starting again. But since I'm at the end of my row, the very next stitch is just going to be a traditional single crochet. And if it weren't for all these tails, you can probably still see it's an extremely straight edge. So now I have just ended my repeat. I've done a second repeat of this pattern. And if you take a look, if I wanted to start again, I would be starting with a single crochet into this very first stitch in the row, which is right here. So I do a single crochet, and then I would do a drop down double crochet. I would work across here, drop down double crochet, back loop only single crochet, drop down double crochet in the next, because that's what I did down here. So you can refer to your previous rows that you've done, and it will just keep on working the same manner. You're just going to work one row like this, and then one will be inset. And then it'll come back again where you're having the same pattern, again, working in the same way. So I've showed you these two, which will get you started. You can rewind the video if you need more help, and you can follow along with the tutorial right from the first mosaic row that I'm due. You can follow along at that point and do the very next row and keep working so that you can continue this exact pattern on up if you're wanting to do a blanket or a purse or something in this design. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure that you are hitting like on this video. Giving it a thumbs up helps me out greatly. Please leave a comment below if you have enjoyed this tutorial. I appreciate you guys watching.